Okay, so imagine this. You're one of the greatest love poets of all time. Your job, your whole purpose, is to find the perfect words for the person you love. And then, poof, you stop. The words just dry up. Today, we're going to dive into 5 of Shakespeare's most intimate and fascinating sonnets, this little cluster where he's desperately trying to explain why he suddenly went silent.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? It's a huge emotional mystery. What on earth could silence a master wordsmith at the absolute peak of his game, especially when the person who inspires him is right there? Well, let's try to figure it out together.
So, the poet's first move here isn't to make some polite excuse. Oh no, he comes out swinging. And his first target? His own divine inspiration, the Muse.
He just kicks off Sonnet 100 with this direct shot. He's basically yelling, "Hey Muse, where have you been? How could you possibly forget the very person that gives you all your power in the first place?" It's such a bold way to start, like he's calling out a slacker at work.
He actually accuses her of wasting her fury. That's that sacred creative fire on worthless song and base subjects. So in his mind, she's been off messing around with trivial stuff while the most important subject in the entire world is just sitting there, waiting to be praised.
And get this, he even uses this very specific kind of insulting word, resty. It's an old term for a stubborn horse that just digs its heels in and refuses to move an inch. So he's not just feeling uninspired, he feels like his own creativity is being willfully, stubbornly lazy. And he's like, rise, get up, get back to work.
And this is where you see the real stakes. This isn't just about writer's block or hurt feelings. No, this is a literal race against death. The poet is ordering his muse to outrun Father Time's scythe, to capture his beloved's beauty and poetry before it's lost for good.
Okay, so after totally scolding his muse, the poet does something really interesting in the next sonnet. He actually imagines what she might say to defend herself, and then he shoots her argument down.
Now, the Muse's excuse is pretty good, right? True beauty doesn't need any makeup from poetry. But the poet's comeback is even better. He says that's not the point. It's not about decorating the beloved. It's about making him last forever, letting him outlive a gilded tomb.
So the takeaway here is that poetry has a much bigger job than just making things sound pretty. For Shakespeare, its deepest, most sacred duty is to preserve things, to rescue beautiful, fragile, mortal things from the constant grind of time.
All right, so having kind of exhausted the whole "it's the Muse's fault" argument, the poet does a complete 180. In Sonnet 102, he offers a way more elegant, way more sophisticated reason for his silence. Here's the new idea in a nutshell. If you're constantly shouting about your love from the rooftops, you're cheapening it. You're turning it into a commodity, something to be sold.
This word, merchandised, is just perfect. It perfectly captures this fear of making love feel, well, commercial. So now the poet argues that by being quiet, he's actually protecting the love's value. He's keeping it precious and private, not putting it on sale for everyone to see. And he uses this absolutely gorgeous metaphor to explain it. He talks about the nightingale, Philomel. In the spring, when love is new and exciting, she sings all the time. But in the full, ripe summer, when all the other birds are chirping away, she stops. Why? Not because summer isn't great, but because she wants her song to stay special, not get lost in the noise.
And this is the brilliant new paradox he lands on. His silence isn't a failure anymore. It's a choice. He's quiet not because he doesn't care, but because he cares so much that he refuses to let his praise become ordinary. All of a sudden, silence is the greatest compliment he can give.
So let's move on to the absolute climax of his argument in Sonnet 103. This is where he gives his most powerful reason for being silent, and he does it by admitting what sounds like total and complete failure.
Just look at the contrast he paints here. On one side, you have his poetry, which he calls his blunt invention, and his dull lines. Ouch. And on the other side, his beloved's face, just reflected in a simple mirror. He says that reflection, that reality, completely overgoes. It totally surpasses anything he could ever hope to write.
So here's the twist. Admitting he's failed is actually the highest praise he can possibly give. He's basically saying, I have to shut up because your beauty is so flawless that any clumsy attempt by me to describe it would only ruin it. The beloved's beauty is just beyond art.
But just as we're settling into all these beautiful, poetic excuses, the very last sonnet in this little group, number 104, comes crashing in with a dose of cold, hard reality.
The poem gets shockingly specific. 3 years. That's how long it's been since the poet first saw his friend. This isn't some abstract idea about time anymore. It's grounded in a real, countable number of years.
And he makes us feel the weight of that time by counting the seasons. 3 winters cold, 3 beauteous springs, 3 hot Junes. You can just feel those years turning over, one by one.
And then he gives us this absolutely incredible, mind-bending image. He says that beauty moves like a dial hand, the hand on a clock. It's secretly stealing away from the face, but you can't perceive its movement at all. The genius of this metaphor is just stunning. Think about it. You can stare at the minute hand on a clock for a full 60 seconds. You will literally never see it move, but you know it's moving. And Shakespeare says that's exactly how beauty fades, silently, invisibly, but constantly.
And this brings him to the final, really unsettling truth. In his own loving eyes, his friend looks exactly the same, just as beautiful as the day they met. But he's starting to suspect that his own eyes are lying to him. He knows that beauty seems to stand still, but that it actually hath motion, and he's terrified that his love is blinding him to the truth.
Which brings us all the way back to that central mystery. After all of these elegant excuses, what was the real reason for the poet's silence? Maybe it was the awful, creeping knowledge of that dial hand all along. And it leaves us with this huge, lingering question. Is poetry just a nice way to celebrate beauty, or is it something much more desperate? A frantic battle to build something permanent against the silent, invisible theft of time?